go to Marion, thanks.
Thank you. Matilda has her facades at 18 months old, and I'm wondering whether they're her facades or the person that she's with. Is she reflecting the facade of the person that she's with? And as I undo my facade, which I'm really, really, really hoping to do, will this assist her in changing her facade?
Yes, a good question about children. Children reflect the desires and, well, if we could put it, the violent, because they are violent desires of the adults surrounding the child. So in other words, the child automatically emotionally assesses the situation in its environment and conforms or displays either one of two patterns in that environment. One is a pattern of opposition to that environment, and the other is a pattern of acceptance of the environment. One of the two will be displayed. Does that make sense? So unfortunately for a child that age, frequently they're not engaging their own will at all, but rather just responding to the wills of its combined environment. They're reflecting back to that environment the problem with the environment's will. And yes, it's an issue that needs to be addressed, obviously, because the majority of children, by the time they get to 5 or 6 years of age, they're in that pattern so much that they now are super sensitive to every environment they're in, and they're automatically conforming to these environments without having any development of their own will yet. And this is why by the time we're 7 or 8 years of age, generally we've got no idea what we want, no idea what our character is, no idea what our personality is, because a lot of times we've spent the majority of our life already up to that stage conforming to our environment. There's a difference between conforming to an environment and conforming to love. A parent who truly loves their child would actually help the child express its will in harmony with love, and not in harmony with the parent's definition of love, but rather in harmony with God's definition of love. So in other words, the parent is not trying to help the child evol, right? But rather is trying to help the child love. And that's the role of a parent. You're a bigger sister, or in your case, or a father is a bigger brother, who hopefully has learnt a little bit about love and the use of the loving will, and that's what you would do. You would teach your child how to, what parts of their will are unloving, what parts of the will are loving, and you would always be examining the child's action and asking yourself, well, what part have I played? What are my emotional demands in this situation? What is this triggering inside of me? And this is why when a child enters from 18 months through to usually 3 or 4 years of age, they call it the terrible twos period, where the child now is confronting most of its environment and responding to either in a accepting way or in a rebellious way to its environment's constrictions. And that's very, very confronting for parents. And that's why parents usually during that period resort to corporal punishment or other methods of bribery in order to change the child's behaviour.
We do our best to hold her, and yesterday I was thinking it's her addictions, being on the breast first thing in the morning, and we will hold her. And I came here and I'm like, it's my addictions to needing quietness in the morning, and so I've created her response. So every time we hold her, it's like, come on, where are our emotions? God, can you help us?
Well, a lot of times, there's so many projections at a child, and particularly for a mother, it's very difficult to not engage these projections because you've already got so many needy holes inside of yourself by the time you're an adult that having a child validates yourself as a woman, firstly. And breastfeeding the child means you're being a good woman as well, and on top of that, and you want to be a good woman for as long as possible. So, of course, the better the woman you are, the longer you'll probably breastfeed, even if the child no longer needs milk and is eating all sorts of other food, but still comes there. And also, there's emotional bonds now that most women love with their children that are actually quite addictive in their nature, that most most women are trying to engage by continuing, hugging and closeness with the child, rather than it being an expression of love. It's what they feel when the child does it to them. And these are all addictions in play. And of course they need to all be addressed. Yeah. You can see as a child, even under today's guidelines of what a loving mother would do, you're going to end up with quite a strong facade because of all the addictions that are being imposed upon the child, and the child feeding back and needing. And in the end, the child feels like it needs mummy to do those things for it, because we've created that hole in them too. Yeah.
It's pretty horrible.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You can see why in this, when children pass, they go usually to Summerland, but if they have quite a number of problems, they will be kept in isolation for some time away from other children until some of these problems are addressed. And then what happens is that we have teachers there in that location in the spirit world who teach them what love really is, and they compare the feeling of love for the child, and they often take them back to their parents on earth to compare what they're feeling from the parent, which is often, not love at all, but it's not just hate, it's all this needy addiction in most cases, and then the child starts recognising that as a terrible pull upon itself, and then starts distancing itself from the parent until such a time as the parent addresses those particular addictions. But it's a terrible thing what we do to our children. Terrible thing.
I could feel the vortex images. She just gets sucked into me. Like as soon as I got home last night,
yep.
We were together because she's more me than I am, because I feel pretty crap about myself underneath the facade.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing, the reflection.
Yeah. And most parents are pretty confronted by the reflection.
Yeah.
And then they want to blame the character of the child for that. And then because the confrontation continues to occur, then they try to mould the character of the child to be what the parent feels more comfortable with. So unfortunately, it's a natural process when you're avoiding pain and avoiding terror. It's a natural process that you're going to engage with any child you have. And the key is to see it and then start to work through the issues surrounding it.
Yeah, I don't want to suck her into my vortex. I want to sort my own vortexes out.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very important thing to do, Marion.
She's got a lot of holes in her vortex already. Yeah. I mean, a lot of holes in her soul already.
Yeah. Huge. And the more she reflects yours, the more she'll become like you in reality. And the key is to, once you've learnt to address your pain, which is the primary driving force. Remember, there's two driving forces of your facade. One is the desensitization to your pain, and the other is the desensitization to terror. If you address the emotion of terror and address feeling the emotions of pain, then of course there are all of those holes that are like big sucking vortexes in the soul. They stop rotating in the manner that they do, and they stop drawing energy from other people. And that certainly does help the child start to recognise its own will and its own personality and its own desires and its own passions and so forth. And if the parent, in addition to that, teaches the child about love, then of course
God's love.
God's love, yes. So any time I refer to anything else, I'm going to call it evil, right? So God's love. And when the parent teaches the child about love, then the child now has a way to make a decision about the loving expression of its will.